how transformative would it be if the people, like majority of people, were to see God as not this old man in the sky with this gavel of you better get it right this time, this one time, because everyone's living in fear. That is a fear-based model. Or if people were to open their eyes to this way of living and be like, okay, what did I do last time? What did God and I decide together?
I'm Krystal Arthur, and I'm your host for the Divine Desire podcast. This podcast is to gift you the sexy, spiritual, sovereign, and specific wisdom to help you find and follow your desire into the magical relationships, business, and life that serves the world and excites your soul. I have been studying and coaching in spirituality, wellness, business, and desire professionally for nearly 15 years. I've been on a journey from being a pastor's wife, mother, and seminary student riddled with depression and anxiety with a toxic marriage, to training in holistic health, hypnotherapy, practicing a tantric approach to sex, love, and relationships, having 5 kids, and a sexy, sovereign, and sacred union of 11 years. I've searched heaven and hell to discover the wellness, woo, and taboo paths and practitioners to help us remember the wholeness and truth, goodness, and beauty within. And I can't wait to share them with you. Do you have a divine desire to heal and reclaim your relationship with yourself, your power, purpose, pleasure, prosperity, and your partner? Do you have an inner knowing of a calling, but fear holding you back from honoring the truest part of yourself, what lights you up? You're in the right place. Some guests may stretch or challenge you. Some guests will help unlock your next level of evolution. My intention is that every conversation is a catalyst to you owning yourself and manifesting your truest desires. This is the space to remind us we are infinite and our desires are the roadmap to our dreams. Here you'll find the inspiration and implementation to go from doing your inner work to being and sharing the work of art that you are.
So I know Whitney from college. We were in college together for a minute, and basically we just like stayed connected online. And I've just like kept my eye on her, and I think there's been several times over the years where I've been like, if you just live closer.
I know. We've said that so many times.
We'd be hanging out all the time.
Yeah.
Her soul is just so beautiful. And if you follow her online, then you know what I'm talking about, or you'll know what I'm talking about. She is, she just shares very openly, and she has such a heart for others. And it just really comes through. And we're very aligned on a lot of things. Like, I think we both kind of went through some like spiritual awakenings type of things around the same time and during the same season. And we just kind of like started messaging like, I saw your post. Well, tell me more about that.
Yeah.
I saw your post. Oh, you're doing hypnotherapy too? I just took a hypnotherapy certification too. Okay, let's talk about this.
Yep.
And so we've had a few conversations over the years, and I'm so excited that I got to come up to Salem, Illinois, where she practices, where she holds her sessions at Be Still Wellness. And so I'm just really excited to be able to share her with you today. So can you introduce yourself?
Yeah. So I am Whitney Murray, or Whitney Lowry. I just recently got divorced, so I'm kind of just whatever you want to call me. It's cool. I have 3 children and 1 on the way. I practice soul coaching. Well, it's essentially, I'm a certified life coach. And then also hypnotherapy, like she said, and I'm a Reiki practitioner. So that's my most recent certification. Yeah. That's really cool. That hasn't really picked up a lot here yet, but I've done maybe 5 to 8 sessions so far. And I also I learned distant Reiki. So I have a little teddy bear in my room to where I can actually lay the teddy bear down and do distant Reiki with clients. So we just found out that my mom has her cancer's terminal. So I will, when she's doing her chemo treatments, then I'll do Reiki on her, distant Reiki with her. So that's really cool that I get to do that. Really cool. Yeah. And it's one of those not a lot of people know what these things are. And so just bringing awareness to like how big of a deal energy is, and how like energy healing plays a huge part in physical, mental, spiritual health. My biggest goal in life is to bring mental health awareness to this area. So we were talking a little bit earlier about just the small town feel and Bible Belt of where I live, like growing up in a town of 650 people, but we had 4 to 5 churches, you know?
Yeah.
So and then also people don't know this probably, but the drug issue and problems here and suicide rates here, like you hear about that stuff in bigger cities and everything, but you don't hear about those things in these smaller areas.
Yeah.
And like the illiteracy rates in like just my county that I live in is like very large. So then you have these children who are growing up in these very, very broken, abusive homes, turning to drugs and alcohol, who have no ability to get jobs because they weren't put in the proper space to learn and grow, you know, and then all the mental health issues that come with that. And then for us to get like good mental health help, like I told you that I went somewhere a couple years ago, I had to go 2.5 hours away.
Oh my gosh.
We have like options to go to like our local hospital in Centralia, but that's like the psych floor. So it's just like they're going to focus more on getting you medicated and stuff like that. But like where I went to, it was like inpatient. They helped with medication, but we also had like daily therapies and stuff like that. But it's like we have nothing like that around here.
Wow.
At all. And that is like my long-term goal, is to open up an inpatient outpatient facility where we use alternative mental health practices to help people. I've already talked to like my personal psychiatrist. She is very interested in alternative mental health help, and we've talked about like psychedelic research and like just any work with like kratom or psilocybin, stuff like that, that could be a really huge like microdosing. Like those are the things that I'm interested in, for people to be able to like come in and do like a microdose or an actual full trip session, walking alongside of a therapist, you know.
There's so much research.
So many options.
But it's not accessible to most of us.
So many options that just aren't being utilized, that I think we're, especially in these small town areas, are just getting slept on, when it could be a game changer.
Yeah. There's so many different forms of therapy that I've seen, that I've experienced. I used to suffer from like chronic depression and anxiety. And for me, I read Dr. Kelly Brogan's book. Have you ever read that? You'd be very fascinated by it, because she's a holistic psychiatrist.
Oh, yes.
So she treated people with like severe depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, completely naturally, and got them to remission. And she has like case studies proving it.
Send me that.
Yeah, it's such a good book. And but most people don't even know that that's possible.
You're right. Yeah.
Let alone like scientifically documented. But like when you go into like psychedelics and stuff, it's like people are doing like one journey, and like it's doing like years and years and years worth of therapy. Like it's like it's like
people who are doing these ayahuasca retreats and stuff like that, who had been like addicts, and they're like coming home and they're like, never again, done.
And it's done just in one session.
Yep.
And it's like, man, we could be saving
so many lives,
so many years of suffering, but also lives. Because how often do people get misdiagnosed and put on a medication that is not the right fit?
Right.
And it changes their chemistry and pushes them over the edge. And no one's talking about that. And it's super controversial to talk about that. But it's so sad that that there's these lower risk options that could at least be explored.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not the answer for everybody. Maybe it wouldn't work for every case.
Yeah.
But the risk to reward ratio, like it's worth a shot.
Yep.
So I think that's really, really incredible. How did you, so we probably lost some people just out the gate when you said energy healing, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yep.
So let's go into that. Like so we met, I said we met in college. We met in Bible college.
Yeah.
At a very conservative Bible college. How did you discover energy healing? How did you discover spiritual coaching? Go into that.
Okay, so I would say...
And what did you have to deconstruct?
Oh, yeah.
To be able to even entertain, I'll say why I'm asking. It was my mental health journey. So I didn't even know the conversation was going to go all here because we didn't talk about this.
Hey, that's all right. Yeah.
My mental health journey. So I identify as having fully deconstructed and reconstructed my faith. And questions that I got were, are you doing this for like money, essentially? Like, are you doing this for attention because it's like more marketable right now? Are you doing this because your marriage was so difficult? Are you doing this because you just want to like lead a hedonistic life and do what you want to do? And it's like, no, like I went to Bible college and then I went to seminary and then we spent 10 years in ministry and we're more religious and like more like dogmatic, honestly, than anybody else that I know, like any of our friends, any of our family. Like we like a little bit look down our noses on the fact that like everyone else had a Christmas tree. It was like, that's that is a pagan symbol. Right. Like we didn't, like we had a Christmas cross. And I mean, literally we had a cross with Christmas lights on it. Yeah. And so like I had to, so part of my deconstruction was taking the Bible so literally that it's like, okay, I know I'm supposed to have peace that surpasses all understanding. And I've dedicated my entire life to studying to show myself approved and to living as purely as possible. And I got to the point where it's like, okay, well, I don't worship God for my mental health, right? So maybe this is just my cross to bear. But still, it just kept getting to me. Like I take the Bible at its word. I'm supposed to have peace. I know it. So either there's something wrong with me, it's something wrong with God, it's something wrong with that. What is this? Yeah. So it was in studying the Bible, like my point is the spark for me, the catalyst was my mental health. Was like, I have to study more. I have to study more. I have to get this. I have to be closer to God because I know there's my mental health being that I'm supposed to be bearing fruit. I don't have the fruit of the Spirit, but I'm doing all the things that I understand I'm supposed to do. Yeah. And it required a level of deconstruction for me to be able to even begin to look at alternative methods of healing because so many of them come out of Eastern religions. Yeah. Yep. So that's why I'm asking for sure. For some context.
So in 2018, I took an internship job at a pretty popular church in this area, and it was like really growing fast. And I once I got like actually involved in the church, I started noticing things that were just going very against my spirit. I just knew in my core were not okay. And I am if I notice something that is not okay, I'm going to say something and ask questions. And when I did that, I was met with, who gave you the authority to come to us when you're just this intern? You're not even like a paid position person, like you don't have the authority. Like if I wanted this type of accountability, then I would ask somebody else. And just very manipulatively turned it around on me. And for, I would say probably a year, I let that like completely just destroy me. Like I was this horrible person. I didn't have a space to do that. Like I just beat myself up. And because a lot of my friends stayed, even though they knew what had happened, like they had stayed. So then I felt like, man, I am the bad person. I am the bad guy, you know? And then it was about a year later, they all started figuring things out on their own too. And that was when I was like, okay, maybe I'm not this bad guy. And that was when I started really opening my eyes. And also at that time, my daughter was, we found out that she had a heart defect, and she was going through all of these doctor's appointments and had to have open heart surgery at 6 months old. And mainstream doctors were telling me to do certain things that, once again, was like, that's not adding up. That's not making sense on why I'm treating my unhealthy heart baby the same as my heart healthy baby. Like, they're two very different people. So why are they getting the same vaccinations? Why are they getting the same treatment on things like that? So then I started looking into alternative things, alternative healing. And that's so, like, it's all just it was all just around the same time that these things were happening, that my eyes were like, I started questioning.
Mm-hmm.
And people looked at me more like what I was met with was that I'm backsliding.
Yes.
And I'm turning away from God. And I'm like, I'm praying now more than ever.
Exactly.
And like, I remember the day of my daughter's open heart surgery when she was 6 months old, where I was writing in my prayer journal, and I was just like, whatever happens, like, I know you're good. I know you're good no matter what. Even though I'd been angry and all the things that had happened to me with church and with her heart and all this and that, I know you're good.
Mm-hmm.
So she ended up being okay. But that, like, her hospital stay, I researched a lot in those few days. And I was listening to a podcast called Almost Heretical. That there were some things I kind of disagreed with on there, but it opened my eyes to some other stuff. And yeah, that was like the catalyst of me starting to look at alternative healing, starting to question the norm of, okay, I was raised up in this Christian society, like, not society, like Christian area where you believe a certain thing and you get vaccinated at this time and you follow these rules. And I was like, maybe I'm not supposed to follow all these rules. Maybe I'm supposed to think for myself. Maybe I'm supposed to be doubting and asking questions. And then in the pandemic happened, 2020, and we had, oh, you're good.
You can come through. No, you're totally fine.
You're good.
Here, I'm gonna take that too. Check me through. Yep, we're good.
So then the pandemic happened, and then that was when things really started flipping, and people just started, like, the vaccines and the bashing each other and the government stuff. It all just became like, and I got engrossed in it all and was just like, let it completely overtake my brain on, like, man, this world is really jacked up. Like, something's just not right. And then fast forward again to 2022, my marriage kind of started going through some things, and I was turning 30. My body started changing and doing weird things. And I remember my 30th birthday, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go on a trip by myself. Called it my solo trip. And I didn't go far. I went like 45 minutes away from here to a little inn. It's called the Mineral Springs Hotel in Oakville. The place is amazing. Super haunted, but I loved it. And I spent most of my time out on the porch, and I was reading, and I hit a little one hitter every now and then, and just chill out and just relax, you know? And one night, these old couples came outside and hung out with me. And we were all just talking about life. And this one lady was telling me that she's an intuitive reader. And I'm like, well, what the heck is that? And she kind of just started going into detail. She said that when she meets people, she just, and like, will just start getting kind of like downloads from from their guides. And I was like, what is a guide? Like, what are you talking about? And I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'll meet with you tomorrow. I was like, I know you're on vacation, but I'll pay you, you know? So the next day, like, I met with her and she started telling me these things about my marriage that were very, very accurate, but broken. And how what my guides, so what she does is she connects directly, like, with my spirit team, my guides. And she said that, like, what they do is she said it looks like they're like sitting at like a conference table and they're just talking. And she's like, has to keep up with everything they're wanting to relay to me. And so, like, she was telling me things about my marriage that were broken, but how we needed to heal it and fix it. She was telling me things about my son that, like, she asked me if he was autistic and I was like, no. And she's like, well, something's not right. And she's like, oh, he has a vaccine injury. And I was like, what?
Had you talked to her at all about vaccines before that?
No, nothing.
That was risky of her, especially back then,
Yeah.
especially like to even bring that up to
She's like, he
anybody.
has a vaccine injury. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, he has, one of the vaccines has penetrated the blood-brain barrier and has made it to where he struggles to release toxins from his body. He needs to be taken. She's like, you already know the person that you're going to take him to. And in that moment, I had the thought in my head of who exactly I was going to take him to. She's like, he needs to be tested for parasites, heavy metals, this, that, and the other. It was like 5 different things. And I was like, okay. And she kind of just started telling me about, like, where I needed to start working, like, on my own spiritual journey and how to look at, like, different things. And she had mentioned something about past lives. And when you grow up as Christians, like, I was like, that's not real, you know, and past lives aren't real. And so when I got home, I just dove in. Guides, past lives led me to hypnotherapy. Yeah. Just all the energy, healing, all Reiki, all the things. And to go back to my son, I took him to the girl and she tested him for all the things. And sure enough, he was filled with parasites, filled with heavy metals, all these different things. We did full detoxes with him.
Was he having challenges before that, like behavior
So, like,
or academic?
He had doctors tell,
I guess
we had doctors,
mindful of this will be.
Yeah, we had doctors tell us that he had oppositional defiant disorder and there was nothing that was going to help him. We could try therapy. Like,
wow.
He'd have these fits of rage that were just uncontrollable. Like, he would start throwing stuff, hitting, kicking, and he was, at that time, probably like 6. I had pulled him from school. We were homeschooling at the time because his behaviors had gotten so bad. Yeah. I sent him back to school after all the detoxes and everything that fall, and he got good behavior awards. Like, we just had to do another detox because
you would have never known otherwise.
Never. Mm-mm. And now I've told his story online, and people have sent their children, people who are their children struggle with ADHD, autism, all the things, and they go to her. She's a chiropractor.
If you want to share her name, you can.
Yeah, it's Allison Kane. She's at Effingham Chiropractic Care Clinic. She's amazing. Wow. Yep.
Oh my gosh! So we've not talked about this.
Yeah,
like, I did not know that story.
Had a lot of life happen in the past, however many years.
Oh my gosh! So I had no idea that was how your journey started.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll do it. That'll send you down the rabbit hole pretty hard and fast.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So you only have so much time.
I know.
I don't even know where to dive in. What time is it?
3.
Oh, you have to go. No. We're gonna have to do a part 2.
Yeah, that's fine.
We're gonna have to do a part 2. Okay, yeah, I'll have to come back up another week.
I can come to you even.
Yeah. Oh, because he has the kids.
Like, yeah, we do 50-50.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I can come to you.
You good driving? You don't get all swollen and stuff?
No, I'm good.
Girl, I couldn't drive. I'm telling you, I was horrible. I couldn't do nothing when I was pregnant.
Oh no.
I couldn't work.
I played volleyball last night.
No.
Yeah.
I would barely drive to my mom's house. It was like 10 minutes away. I'd drive with the seat laid back like this.
Oh my God.
Barely sitting over the steering wheel, just trying to get there for her to take care of me the entire day.
Yeah. We were eating supper last night and I got a call from my sister-in-law. She's like, hey, your brother's team needs another player. Can you come up and play? And I'm like, well, yeah, I'll just pack the kids up. And I play.
Okay, we have to do something to conclude this. Okay, wait,
Yeah.
I don't want to make you like picking up your kids. Okay. So what do people misunderstand most about how you practice right now? Like the sessions that you hold. And what is your, how do you see it? What's your perspective and like your like mission with what you do?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And then we're gonna have to dive in for like 2 hours again next week
for sure. So I think the biggest misconception is a lot of people think that I'm involved in like new age spirituality that's like worshiping crystals and worshiping guides and archangels and all this and that. And it's like I feel like I believe very differently than other people, that I've stayed very close with my relationship with God. And even though my life doesn't look the traditional way, I have formed almost what I feel is like a whole new belief system that I've still have yet to see in like anybody else. But that like we all are energetic beings and God made everything with energy and a frequency, just as like, so people are like, oh, you believe in rocks and stuff like that. And it's like, no, but I believe that that these crystals and rocks have a frequency and have an energy to do something. Mm-hmm. So it's not about the thing, it's about the creator of the thing. Like everything I do goes back. Mm-hmm. And if I can't lead something back to God, then I know it's not for me. Mm-hmm. So when people talk about, I would ask like my way that I bring the gist of like a Reiki session. I'm like, my best way that I can explain it is I'm just very intentionally praying over you.
Yep.
Like when I got my Reiki certification, like we had to do these like attunement meditations, and she laid me down, or like I laid down on the bed and she did a little guided meditation, and then she just let me go, and like I just laid on the table for like 20 minutes, and then she was like asked me like what I saw or whatever. And she led me to a beach, and then like she just stopped talking, and I was laying there and I just saw Jesus just like doing Reiki on me. And so now when I do Reiki sessions, my visualization is that Jesus is standing right behind me, sending energy through me to my client, because I know I may have energy and a frequency, but I don't have any power without God. Like I'm just his creation. Like unless he gives me that ability, I'm just a being, just like a rock. Mm-hmm. So I point everything back. Everything goes back to Jesus. Everything goes back to God. And that's what I think the biggest misconception is of what I do, is that since I don't go to church regularly anymore and I don't look to have the life of a typical Christian, that must mean that I've fallen away or I've backslid or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's just the complete opposite. I am now working in a capacity where I have to rely on God every session. Like I cannot start a session without praying first, for protection over myself, for grounding in his presence, for protection over my client from me and my mm-hmm. energy that I could be bringing in, you know. Mm-hmm. It's all so important. And even like, I don't even see people within the Christian faith that work in churches that pray to that capacity on a daily basis, knowing that their career relies on it, their life mm-hmm. relies on it, because I'm not going to enter that room and into a session without praying first. Mm-hmm. Like I could bring whatever home to me and my children, mm-hmm. Like, it's detrimental that I am in prayer, no matter what. And I don't think people get that.
Yeah.
And wouldn't even consider that to be a thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I can't wait to talk again.
I know. This was fun.
Oh, there's so much more to talk about. Okay. So when we left off, you just shared about the woman that you met who told you things she couldn't have known about. You presumably couldn't have known about your marriage and about your son and his health that were game changers for his entire life.
Yeah.
And then took you on a journey where you experienced Jesus.
So that was at my Reiki, when I was getting certified for Reiki.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That was when that happened.
Okay.
So it's like, yeah, so many things.
So, and we were talking about like misconceptions that people have about what you do, who you are, how you practice. So Reiki is one thing that you practice. You also practice hypnotherapy.
Yeah.
So let's go into that some, right?
Okay.
Because I also practice a form of hypnotherapy. And I know that some misconceptions there are like, I'm not going to let you control my mind. Like, you're going to have me barking like a dog. I was going to say quacking like a chicken. I'm so happy I caught that before it came out.
That's what I always used to say. I would say quack like a chicken and bark like a duck or whatever. Like I always, yeah.
But so, you know what I mean? So what kind of, going back into like, what did you have to deconstruct to even be able to entertain hypnotherapy? And then what do you run into that people
everything
believe?
Starting hypnotherapy, like that was one of the biggest transitions of like my deconstructing, because as a Christian, you're not supposed to believe in past lives. So when I got home from that trip, I call it my solo trip, with meeting that intuitive woman, I started with the book Journey of Souls by Dr. Michael Newton. Favorite book. I've read it multiple times. And so he's a hypnotherapist. And so reading that and processing like past lives, first, like just that in itself was like, okay, I've been told my entire life that reincarnation is not real. But then why does this stuff make so much sense? Why is this settling in my soul so much? And then you have that issue of, well, when you're walking with the enemy, things feel good. That may not be, so it was like,
the devil is an angel of light.
Yes. So it was just like that back and forth inner turmoil inside of me of like, okay, am I skating with something that is bad, that's leading me astray? But then when I kept like, I almost looked at that book as like a research book.
Yeah.
Like I devoured it and was like, I read chapters over and over and over again to like really understand it, to like wrap my head around some of the things, because it was like so mind blowing on how much it made sense on creation.
Yes.
Like how beautifully designed, once again, giving credit to God. Like if this is your design to have so much grace for your creation that not just body people, but the souls that you've created, that you not only give them one life, but you give them multiple lives to learn, to get it right, to end up eventually someday becoming like Jesus. Like, not that anybody will ever be Jesus, but like that's the goal, right? Is to model our life like Jesus. Like we're supposed to figure out and do that in one life. one lifetime? There's no way. And I know that I've probably had many lifetimes, and I'm still very far from what Jesus is. Like, I'm gonna need a lot more to even come this much close to like his goodness and kindness and gentleness, all the fruits of the spirit, you know. Like, those are the things that I'm praying for constantly, and I'm like, I'm not there. And I want to be there. But I know that what helped me with learning about all this is like, oh, you're giving me more grace than I ever even thought possible with this model of reincarnation.
With this model. So reincarnation was hard for me.
Yeah.
Like, it was almost like the last, I'm saying last, obviously there's probably so much more to deconstruct, so much more to reimagine and to embrace. But like, as far as like the major like pillars, like pillar things, that was a my husband actually was like looking at it first. And I was like, I'm not there yet. I'm just not even ready to talk about it. I'm not even ready to like go there in my mind. But what consistently has gotten me throughout my journey is the scientific evidence, right? Like, universities are studying these things at this point.
Yeah.
There's so much evidence for reincarnation that it's almost like
all the children coming forward.
Push yourself to not believe. You have to like do mental gymnastics to not believe it. And so it's like, but I also, similarly to you, what helped me to receive the truth of it was like, okay, but this is such a loving and beautiful model. Like, the idea of you get a tiny lifespan, especially in light of eternity, to get it right, to hear the right message about this specific person. You have to have lived in the right country and been exposed to the right people and not been traumatized by the wrong people, you know, and like everything has to line up just perfectly. It's like, that doesn't sound like a God that wills for everyone to be saved.
Yeah.
And then
to bring his children home to him.
Yeah.
Like,
that doesn't sound like a God of redemption. But this model is to me more like, oh no, like I will for all of, like, it's so much more grace to me. And also then you take it to from that level, the like the salvific idea, right? There's so much more opportunity. Not even just like, if you take it from a very conservative model of like Jesus is the only, you have to hear this specific message and that's the only way to God, then even in that model, it still, reincarnation still makes the most sense. Right. But then on the, you know, where I'm not in alignment with that model anymore, with the retribution theology type stuff, and substitutionary atonement, I'm not in alignment with that anymore. But so on both kind of ends of the spectrum, it still makes the most sense, whether you're in, like, if you're taking more of a, like, okay, but all this karmic junk that I have, okay, well, you have time to work it out, right? It just makes sense. But then taking it from that, but also to like be perfect as I am perfect. And it's like, I mean, come on, bro. Like, how are you going to say that no one is perfect, no one's sinless, not one, and then say be perfect? And it's like, oh, well, we are, like, it's, to me, what that means is recognize that there is only one power in the universe. And it's actually less humble. It's actually more arrogant to believe that you somehow are made of stuff that is not God. Right. Like, where'd you come from then? What gives you breath? Like, what gives you life? It's like, so we are all that thing, that energy, that love that permeates the universe, that universal force. We're all made of the same stuff. So be that.
Made in our image.
Be one.
Made in our image.
Be who I made you to be. And so then it's not like what you're doing or what you're even believing. It's just be. Be perfect. And so I can like remove the word perfect now, and I can just say, be God, be love, be joy, be peace, be patient, be kindness, be goodness, but be the fruit of be that one thing as I am that one thing. But how many of us get that right now? You know what I mean? Like, how many of us get that in this moment, not just on an intellectual level, but like it is the more true than any other thing that we've ever experienced, and we're living in that. So it's like, that makes sense. That it would take lifetimes to learn, and learning through relationships.
And how transformative would it be if the people, like majority of people, were to see God as not this old man in the sky with this gavel of you better get it right this time, this one time, because everyone's living in fear. That is a fear-based model. Or if people were to open their eyes to this way of living and be like, okay, what did I do last time? What did I plan? And that gets into the whole like soul plan and in between lives and stuff like that. It's like, what did God and I decide together that I needed to walk through in this life? I just sent a podcast to a friend yesterday who had a rough childhood. Mom died of drug addiction. Dad was kind of just like this hard. Can I cuss?
Yeah.
Okay. Dad was just like this hard ass, like not super loving, whatever. And I sent her this podcast and she was like, okay, so you're telling me you believe in that we pick our parents. And I was like, I do. I said, and especially now that I've done hypnotherapy and have witnessed what I have witnessed in hypnotherapy sessions from multiple clients, I do believe in that now. And she was like, you know what? That, and I said, what do you think about that? And she was like, well, honestly, that makes me rethink everything that I've went through in my entire life, that I'm not being punished for something, but that I went through what I went through so that I could be the type of mom I am to my kids right now. That one little thing, how freeing. She's probably kept herself in this mental torment for all these years. She's 32 years old. One podcast that explained this model could have just freed her.
Yeah. Okay, hold on. I'm going to check this.
Okay.
Because I realized I didn't put it on Do Not Disturb.
I got makeup on this table.
Okay. All right. And I realized we probably shouldn't.
Ooh, am I hitting the table?
Oh, yeah. We shouldn't touch the table.
Okay.
That's okay.
I'm such a hand, talk person.
I know. Okay. Yes. And that's why this matters to talk about, not to evangelize people in, right? But when someone's coming to you and they're hurting, right, just be like, have you explored this? Have you considered? Because
it's so scary.
It is so scary to live under the idea of life happens to me. And if I do the wrong thing, or, it's almost like when the man is, was he born blind? Was it the man that was born blind? It's like, who sinned? Was it him or his parents? And it's like,
I love that. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, okay, so we're living under the idea of like Job's friends, of like, obviously you screwed up somewhere.
Yeah.
This is your fault and you're being punished.
Yeah.
Rather than, no, everything's for me. No matter how painful, traumatic, sad, scary, horrific.
What am I supposed to be learning through this? How am I supposed to be growing through this? What is this supposed to be teaching me? How can I utilize this tragic situation to benefit me, my kids, my grandkids, my friends, my parents?
Yeah.
Just, it's so vast.
And otherwise,
the possibilities.
The end of the story might be horrific, like might just end in terror. But to be able to say, okay, that was horrific. Some of the things that are happening in the world right now, I don't have the capacity for.
Yeah.
I don't have it. The only way I can even bear it at all within me is to say, and some people will say, well, that's a weak mind. Like, you have to believe in these things to be able to manage life. I don't have to believe. That's fine. You know what I mean? But there's that's when I go back to, well, there's also scientific evidence that's like, it makes sense on that level too.
Right.
But as I'm speaking for myself, it is helpful for me to say, okay, And like from the Christians would say, God already knew. Okay, that's beautiful. And that's true. But if we're talking about a God who punishes,
right,
then that God already knowing that that was going to happen to me just kind of feels abusive. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I see what you're saying. But then we look at this model of Earth School that he created. So we can also understand and try to wrap our mind around, okay, without sadness, you wouldn't know joy.
Oh, no, we are completely aligned on that. No, but I'm saying if it's only one life, and if you don't get it right in this life, then you're going to hell.
Right.
And so you mean to tell me you knew before I came here that I was going to be with this, I was going to go to this church and that pastor was going to abuse me in all these different ways, and then I was going to die at his hand, and I was supposed to receive Jesus through him, and now because I didn't, I'm a burn for eternity.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
So that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
But no, exactly. I want you to go back into that, because with this model, where you have multiple lifetimes, and it's like you sent me here to learn something, and no matter how painful the lesson, that's not the end of my story.
Right.
Yes. It doesn't end in damnation.
Yes. So he does preemptively know the pain and hurts and sorrow that you're going to go through, which I also can appreciate, because I know that you're going to be walking with me through, like, it's coming.
Yeah.
Oh, so you're already there. He's already there waiting for me about to walk through, like, me just finding out about my mom having terminal cancer. Like, you were already there waiting for me, knowing that was going to happen, knowing I was about to fall apart. I can rest in the fact that, like, I know you're already here with me.
Yeah. And you're never going to leave me.
And you're never going to leave me.
Nothing can separate me from the love of God, which I am. Like, it's not, oh, I'm in this mess because I messed up and I'm separate from God and God despises me. He's turned his face from me and now I'm just living in hell.
Yeah.
Just to live in hell for eternity.
Right.
But rather, like, God is with us in the valley of the shadow of death. God is walking through hell with us. You know, Jesus goes to hell to minister to the spirits. Right. It's like, there's nowhere that God is not. And that empowerment, and it's not a God on the outside, like just like watching you try to figure it out on your own, but a God from the inside, always one with you, always walking with you and empowering you and encouraging you. It's like, yeah. And knowing that, like, okay, what happens to my body, it might feel horrific in the moment, but that's not who I am.
Yeah. And it's not going to last forever.
It's not going to last forever. Yeah.
And I think people get caught up, I always do that.
It's okay.
Me included. I am the worst about getting caught up where I'm at. Like, I'm horrible about living in the present. I want to live in the future or the past to avoid the present. But when I am in the present and I'm in pain, it feels like I'm never going to get out of that pain. So when I am in it, and I do have that sense of clarity that pops up every once in a while, and I can get myself out of that mindfulness and all the things. What I tell myself is, okay, this hurts now, or make it hurt now so it doesn't hurt later. So, like, walking with my friends through grief, or even me grieving. I'm grieving my marriage and my mom and all the things, that's what I just keep having to remind myself is, like, okay, feel it now. Don't prolong this hurt. Feel it now. Make it hurt now so it won't hurt later. And that saying came from a boyfriend I had in high school who was in the military. He was, like, going through boot camp when we were dating, and he was like, you gotta make it hurt now so it won't hurt later. Like, talking about, like, going through boot camp. And I'm like, okay. And I've, like, kept that saying forever because it applies. It really does, So, because the first thing we want to do is hide from our pain. And so to go back to hypnotherapy, a lot of clients or people who talk to me don't want to come because they're scared of, like, me being in their mind or whatever, but also because they're like, oh, that sounds really hard. That sounds really, they're scared. They come to me and they're filled with so much anxiety preemptively before the session even begins, because they've worked something up in their head of what's going to come out and how it's going to feel and what it's going to be like. That because we live in a society where it's like, I want to avoid pain at all costs. And it's like, but we were made to feel pain. Like, it's a signpost. It's a stop, look at me. There's a reason this hurts. What's it saying to you? What's it speaking to you? What's it trying to teach you, you know? And with hypnotherapy, so through the session, I'll take people back to a past life, or either a past life regression or an age regression, so memories into this life. And what's cool is that they get to re-experience. Like, I had a girl who it was either her husband or her fiance, I think it was her husband, died in a really bad car wreck. And in her session, she wasn't there the day of the car wreck, but in her session, she was taken there and was witnessing her husband being thrown from the vehicle, like all the details of the wreck. And she was able to be with him through that whole moment. And I'm sitting there like, this was like probably one of like the first 10 sessions that I'd ever done. And I'm sitting there like I'm getting uncomfortable, almost in a panic, like maybe I should take her out of this. Because I'm like, can she handle it? Well, there's a reason her subconscious chose to take her to this space.
Yes.
So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to let it play out. And she was able to speak to him in that, because his spirit separated from his body once, like even before like all of like I guess the vehicle rolled multiple times, was thrown from the vehicle, you know. And I remember at one point she was like crying, and she's like, I can't find him. And then she like found him, and she like went over to his body, and he was like, I'm right here. Like, and they spoke, and he was able to tell her he was okay, and that his soul didn't fully experience that his soul left the body before any of the pain actually happened. So I love that story. So for her to be able to witness that, like the grieving that she was prolonging and putting off, or not even able to fully grieve because she didn't even know how, you know, she was able to receive that. I had another mom who lost a baby, and she was taken to spirit realm where she was met by her daughter. She was like, started crying, and just was talking to her, and she's like, she's happy, she's okay. And then the grandpa that had passed away walked up and was with the little girl. So just like, I get to see and hear these amazing things and watch people go through these transformative moments. And I record all the sessions so they get to hear back and listen to them. And whether they allow it to change their life or not, it's an opportunity to.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know that I've had some clients who come in and they have these amazing sessions that could just be life-changing, and then I don't see or hear or talk to them again, you know. And it's like, man, I wonder how they're doing, and I hope that like that session mattered, that it sticks with them, that they went home and listened to the recording. But that stuff's out of my control, and I can't, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just fascinating.
That is.
If you're ready to heal your relationship with yourself and your partner, deepen your impact in the wellness or spiritual space, and reclaim your power and pleasure, you'll want to join our online community and newsletter. Newsletter sounds boring, but it's totally free and will ensure you don't miss a single transmission. Likewise, the community is an additional free space to remind us our desires are the roadmap to our dreams. Our community and newsletter dive deep into the challenges of balancing intimacy, personal growth, and building a purpose-driven business. You'll get exclusive insights from our podcast, along with tools and resources for things like embodying the power couple dynamic, where your business and relationship fuel each other, integrating fear and imposter syndrome in launching and growing a spiritual or taboo business, reclaiming power and pleasure, alchemizing shame and criticism. It's in community that you'll find the initiations and inspirations that will pave your path towards embodying your full potential. Joining the community will automatically add you to the email list. Again, it's totally free, and it's the #1 way to support the podcast. Simply go to KrystalArthur.com or click the link in the show notes. That's my name, KrystalArthur.com, or find the link in the show notes. Join us today and step into the true power of who you are, both in your relationship and in your business.
Thank you so much for sharing those stories. That was going to be my next question, was like, take us into some of those transformative moments that you've experienced with hypnotherapy, because it's so fascinating. Because that hypnotherapy, like what you described, that could be so many different, that could have been like some time travel, that could have been just imagination, right? It could have been like some mediumship, like, you know what I mean? Like, it really, like, there's so many possibilities, but what it certainly is healing.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's my thing when I come back to some of these. It's like, well, what, is it this? Is it that? Is it this? It's like, I don't know. And I'm not so much concerned about that as, is it healing? Is it freeing? Does it help them integrate the experience more so that they can live their life more fully?
Right.
Right. Now, I have my beliefs. I think that was real. I think that was an actual experience. But my point is that I don't think it should be dismissed, even if one's coming from the perspective of, well, maybe it's just their imagination. It's like, great, like, great. Like the placebo effect works. Great.
Absolutely.
Like, I'll take what I can get to get through this life, like to be able to have these life lessons really help me not be something that holds me in the past, but helps me take steps forward in my future and be able to function more and love more myself and others.
Yeah. I've had meditations where, like, so I've never gotten to experience a hypnotherapy session, past life regression, but I've done meditations where I will say I've been taken to a past life in a deep meditative state, and people could say, you made that up, like in your head. And it's like, very well could have, but where'd it come from? Like, I saw a person that felt like me doing this thing around these people, and the experience felt very real. So whether I made it up in my head or it was an actual memory of a past life, can they not both be teaching? Can we not have both? And
To me, either way, it's resourceful.
Right.
Of my body, mind, soul complex to have done. Either way, it's, beautiful of life, universe, God, to have been able to bless us with that gift, with that design. And either way, my main point saying all this is that it's not freaking evil.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, a house divided against itself cannot stand. So if it's causing you to bear more fruit of the spirit, if it's bringing out more peace within you, if it's bringing out more joy, more love, more forgiveness within you, then why would that be of a maleficent force?
And that could be your gauge with everything. Is my life becoming more fruitful of this, or did I go down this dark path after this happened? But even, it's so hard, because even if that, you could be going through like that dark night of the soul of like the spiritual awakening, and it'd be like, okay, but so it's such a hard concept to grasp, and that is why I think that it's so important for you to stay connected with God in prayer, stay connected with God in some way, shape, or form, because he's not going to allow you to just like completely be gone from him if you are attempting to stay near to him. So even throughout, so like I've kept prayer journals since I've been like 14 years old. Like I have a stack like this tall. And so like throughout all of this, I've had people come and, message me and tell me that I'm being heretical and I'm doing this and I'm leading people astray and all this and that. Like, even my mom right now is struggling. Like she just recently started going to church, and I don't go to church as much. Like I'll go randomly sometimes, but I don't go all the time. She's really like pushing for me to get back in church and saying, my kids, they're hurting right now because they're not in church and they need to be in church and all this and that. And I'm just like, this is where I'm at right now. I don't feel like church is a safe space for me right now. I still pray every day. I'm in my prayer journals or in my head when I'm driving or before sessions or at night before bed, before with my kids, I'm constantly praying. So it's like I have to trust and believe that God is leading me right now, because if I don't believe that, then like where am I at? Like I'm just lost. Like I have to have faith that he's leading me where I'm at and that I'm okay. I don't know. That was a lot of rambling too. Off topic.
It was true for you.
Yeah.
Who's God to you?
Who is God to me?
We talked to them about like who God is, who we don't feel like God is. Who or what is God to you?
So when I write in my prayer journal, I really struggled with, because I went down like a TikTok rabbit hole of like God's name. So back in the day, I used to like start every prayer in my prayer journal with, dear Heavenly, like, dear God, dear Heavenly Father, dear, like I would have like something that I've always said. And now every day I make his name so personal. So like if I'm having a day where I am just like so filled with anxiety, I'll address him as like, to the one who brings me peace, to the one who heals my soul, to the one who created me, to like, he feels so, and it's hard, like even saying he, like, I know that he is genderless, but it's hard to like get away from that aspect or like, but after having sessions, hypnotherapy sessions of life between lives where people go from past life into through death scene into spirit realm, and they feel the God presence. Like just being in a room with somebody who is witnessing that, it is just that validation of like, okay, there is a being out there who said the earth needs a Whitney. And that is just huge to me. That my soul was so purposed, like so thought out, intricately thought out to play a piece in a large puzzle. I don't know. It just like, it's one of those things that kind of stops you in your tracks and you're just like, I just got to sit with it. So like God to me is, you can't answer that question. Really? Like you really just can't even like, because to wrap your mind around what God is, I don't think my physical brain has the capacity to describe that. Yeah.
That was beautiful. I've actually never experienced past life regression. I've never been in a room where anyone's, and I've not even dived that. I actually started the book that you mentioned, but it was way too early. It was way too early.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
like, nope. There's so many books I started like years ago and came back around to and was like, okay, now's the time. And like fully embraced at like years later. Actually haven't come back to that. Now I have to.
Have to.
But like I've embraced like from podcasts and different things I've listened to. I've just been exposed. It's like once you know, it's just you just know. I feel like it gets to a point where it's just undeniable. For me at least it was. But no, I have not read that book. I've not actually experienced it before. But I love that description and that like from the perspective of the one witnessing someone else going through it too. That's really beautiful. And it's something that can happen like in like the way that I practice hypnotherapy, but it's more like spontaneous. As well as like the age regression and different things like that. But yeah, it's not come up yet.
Yeah.
So that is so fascinating to me. So Reiki, hypnotherapy.
And so then I'm also certified as a life coach, but life coach sounded really strange to me. So I switched it to soul coach. I felt like that like spoke to me more of like what I'm trying to do.
So is that more like integration of like the other therapies, or is it a completely separate offer?
It's a completely separate offer. Okay. So, it's so weird. It looks a lot like talk therapy, which I can't call it therapy, right. But that's what it looks like. And that was something I never wanted to do. I grew up my whole life in counseling and therapy, and I was like, their job must really suck. To sit and listen to whiny, bitchy people all the time. Like, when they go home, are they miserable?
That's what I thought too. I thought I don't emotionally have the capacity.
Yeah.
I'll bring it home with me.
Absolutely. So that was like, and I ended up having a friend who was like, a lot of people in our area probably won't be able to afford hypnotherapy, because that's what I was like, I just want to do that all the time. She's like, you need to offer another service that's not as much money, but you could do more, to fill your time. And I was like, all right, I guess I'll do this and just see how it goes, So I started doing it, and that's what really took off for me last summer. And I ended up loving it. But I learned from my experience in counseling on what I didn't love. When I would go to counseling, it was like I sat in a room and I just talked about my problems and I left. I didn't leave with anything like, I'm a very like, I need you to tell me to do something. Like, I need you to tell me, give me a goal, something to work towards, something to think about. Like, tell me to go home and journal these things. So I was like, I want to be somebody who like walks with my clients. Like, let's figure out game plans. Like, let's do life together a little bit. Like, I know you're only coming to see me once a month, once every other week or whatever, but feel free to text me throughout the week. Like, if you're struggling, I'm here. I may not answer you immediately, but I'll find time in my day to message you back. Yeah. And then another thing is we go over wins, struggles. So that's majority, obviously, of the session. But then we also go over wins, because when we're constantly just focusing on the bad, it's like, what the hell is there to live for? Like, if we're just in doom and gloom all the time, and I live in doom and gloom, like I'm an Enneagram 4, like that's like I can stay in melancholy like forever. But I also know that they tell Enneagram 4s to have a gratitude journal, because you can't live there. So with my clients, I'm like, all right, give me 3 wins from this past week. And a lot of them are like, oh, nothing. There's nothing. And I'm like, no, there's something. Because you got out of bed today.
Yeah.
You got your kids to school.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was having a bad day, I remember my dad saying that same thing to me. I was like, when I found out my mom was dying of cancer, I was like, how do people do this? How do people find out this horrible, life-changing information and then just continue with their life like a normal person? Like, how do you get up in the morning? And he's like, what are you doing right now? And I'm like, I'm at work. He's like, so you got up? You have the kids last night? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, so you got them to school? You got them ready and got them to school? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, where are you at? And I'm like, I'm at work, folding laundry. He's like, okay, so you went to work. You're doing it. And he's like, you just keep doing that. And it never occurred to me, like, that's just life.
Yeah.
Because I'm such an overthinker. Like, I need to know how to live every second. Like, someone give me a guidebook on how to do this perfectly. So with my soul coaching clients, it's like, I can't give you a guidebook. And I also can't hold your hand all the time. But when you come to me, I want you to leave feeling like we've talked about tools that you can use throughout the week, that you can pull from your toolbox, your mental emotional toolbox, be able to pull out and be like, okay, I'm having a panic attack. What are some things me and Whitney talked about in our session that could help me right now? With some of my clients, I've been like, your five senses. Put some sour candy in your pocket. Go take a cold shower. Go sit outside and be like, okay, I feel the wind on my skin. I smell flowers. I see birds. The trees are turning green. Because anxiety attacks are literally us over focusing on our body and our mind. But when we get out of ourselves a little bit and focus on the world around us, it's like we can open our mind to be able to just breathe. And so like little things like that we're just like not taught in school.
Yeah.
Like these things need to be taught in kindergarten.
For sure.
Of how to get yourself out of a panic attack.
It's like humaning 101. Like,
yes.
This is how you human.
Yep.
Yeah, it reminds me of, you've seen Frozen 2?
Oh, yeah.
It might be my favorite movie of all time. But it reminds me of when Anna finds out that Elsa died.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, just do the next right thing.
Yeah.
And that entire song is such a song of like a go-to song when you're grieving.
Right.
Anything. And so soul coach, hypnotherapy, Reiki, is that all your services?
Mm-hmm.
For now?
For now. It's never going to end.
Right.
Like I'm never going to stop adding to this whatever the heck I am.
How did you go from like just learning and studying and implementing for your own life to I want to do this professionally and I want to serve other people in this way? This is especially coming from Bible college and church ministry and a conservative area of just the country in general. That takes a level of courage to even first admit that desire to yourself and then to act on that desire.
Yeah. So I've always said that there's like two sides of me. There is this rebel Whitney, and then there is this people pleaser Whitney. And the people pleaser Whitney is like, she works out of straight fear, just all the time. She's scared what people think of her. She is very, very, very scared of failing.
Really quick, check.
Yep.
This is just so good. I'm like, I'm not missing any of this. This is fully recorded. Okay, very good. Very scared of what people will think.
Yeah, all of those things. And then there's this rebel Whitney that has, like, I think that's the truer
Whitney, but that kind of got bullied out of me for a while in like junior high because I was not nice.
I was not.
Yeah. So like I needed to be knocked down a couple pegs. But then it turned me into this like more submissive, like, and then even I turned into a different type of bully in high school to where it was like I wanted people to think I was funny or I wanted to be extra likable. So I would like do things that were really out of my character to like get people to like me. But like this truer Whitney, this rebel girl over here, I've never been one to want to go with the crowd. Like that's part of me. In like high school of being in class when a teacher would present something and I like not like math where things are like fine, like this is math, you know, but like where you can have an opinion. I could not keep my mouth shut. It was like, well, what about this? And at church, growing up, Sunday school, well, that doesn't make sense. What about this? Like, are you factoring this in? Are we thinking about this? Like constantly like challenging. And that made me look like a bitch my whole life. And so when it came to this season of stepping into this new space of hypnotherapy and like learning about all this stuff, this was in the midst of, so going back to COVID, learning about vaccines. I made my stance on this very publicly, like on Facebook before, like this was like 2019. So before COVID had hit and people had started actually researching vaccines like more. I like set myself up to get just completely blasted on Facebook.
Yeah. I think that was one of the first times that we connected.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, hey, yo, yeah. I feel you.
Yeah. I set myself up knowing what was going to happen, but that rebel side of me wanted to like, and I think I get this from my dad, wanted to just like ruffle feathers.
Mm-hmm.
Not to be a shit stirrer, but to get people thinking. Like, why are you guys okay with living this life where you're not using your brain?
Mm-hmm.
Where we're not using comment, like we're not thinking about anything else but what we're told to think about. The indoctrination is so big. And I know that's like such a popular word now, but like, I noticed these things a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
College professors, like where I'm in the minority, everybody else in the class is listening to this college professor talk about a certain thing and agreeing with him. And I'm like, no, that's not right.
Because we've been systematically stripped of our sovereignty. Another trendy buzzword right now, but it's true.
Yeah.
When from the time you're born, you don't get to choose anything, right? And that comes up a lot with my parenting. It's like, man, I really just want to make you do what I want you to do because I'm tired and it'd be easier. And
struggling with that the most right now.
It's so freaking hard to live what I believe with my freaking kids. Yeah. So it's just like, there's a lot of y'all and there's not a lot of energy in me right now.
Yeah.
I just need you to stop.
Yeah.
I don't need you to ask questions. Mm-hmm. I need you to stop the first time I say, and sometimes I do want you to be afraid of me. Ultimately, I don't, but sometimes I do. I think just like the other day, this is off topic, sorry. But I was just like, I think it was yesterday. I was like, I was terrified to speak to my parents the way you just spoke to me.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have even considered it. That would happen in my head and maybe in a whisper tone with music blasting in my room. Mm-hmm. You know? Yeah. There's no way I would have said that. So like, but that fear is really put in us from a very young age to you don't question.
Yeah.
You do not have control over what you eat, where we go, who touches you. If that aunt wants a hug, you are disrespectful and you'll be punished if you don't hug that aunt or that uncle. Right? Like that whole thing. Like You don't have any bodily sovereignty. You don't have any. It's just, this is what we do.
Yeah.
And therefore this is what you do.
Yeah.
And
what a fine line of teaching. There are certain people that like, just show them some respect. Like when you're going to school and you're asked to please sit in your seat, please sit in your seat. Like, but then there's that whole flip of a switch of like, you also want to teach them to have that voice and to be able to be like, I don't want to sit right now. Like, I need to move my body. Like, can you please listen to me? Like, let me get up. But we're teaching them what we're going against right now.
Yeah.
To have that autonomy, to have that voice, to be like, I don't want to sit. Because when you're an adult and you're going to work, if I want to stand up and walk around for a little bit, I get to do that. Yeah. Like, our kids don't get to have that voice when they're young. And that's a whole nother podcast.
Well, the thing is, it goes from, okay, this is practically what would work best in the scenario, to, no, you're wrong and bad if you don't do these things. And then there's the shame aspect to it.
Yeah.
And then you don't feel, then you're punished and often separated from the group. And just physiologically, as creatures, when you separate somebody from a group, that gives a signal of unsafety to the body, right? So like, if I'm not a people pleaser, if I don't do what I'm told to do it with unquestionably, then I'm unsafe. I can be kicked out of the tribe, which would mean death. You know what I mean? Like, I might not get
things are popping in my head right now. Yeah.
You know, the nurturing of relationship and care and I literally might not survive. That's what our bodies hear when it's like, no, you're bad, you're wrong, and I don't want to be around you because you didn't do what I said.
This is for conscious couples, coaches, and catalysts of spiritual and wellness businesses who feel like imposters in their business because their relationships are draining or toxic. Do you feel like your marriage or relationship is hanging by a thread, constantly fighting with your partner and worried about how it's affecting your kids, your energy, and your business? Maybe you've tried everything. New diets, another self-help book, another certification, all in an effort to fix yourself, your partner, your family. And yet here you are, burnt out, exhausted, and still feeling like something's missing. I'm Krystal Arthur, and I've been exactly where you are. I've been married for 11 years, and most of those we were in spiritual leadership, preaching heaven while living in hell, both as individuals and as a couple. We lived through rage, anxiety, depression, and caused trauma to our 5 children. We followed all the conventional advice, confided in mentors, and went to the marriage retreats year after year. The message was always the same: behave better, resist your desires, submit, and obey the rules. But here's the truth. The real transformation happens when you stop trying to fix yourself and everyone else and start accepting and loving yourself unconditionally. The secret is in reclaiming your power and discovering where you're holding yourself back from intimacy, aliveness, and your truest desires, both in your relationship and in your business. As a wellness or spiritual entrepreneur or leader, you feel like you should have the answers, the spiritual perspective, the clarity to navigate and balance it all. But when your marriage is falling apart and you're starting to feel like a hypocrite in your own business, it can feel impossible to find a way forward. I've lived that disconnection, the feeling of hopelessness and the heartbreak of wondering if divorce is the only answer. Through my coaching, I guide individuals and couples to uncover their deepest desire and finally start to build the life, relationship, and business they're meant for. You'll learn to heal from within, letting go of the constant need to fix, and create a relationship where you and your partner become the power couple you've always dreamed of, full of purpose, passion, and potential. In this 6-month container, together we will create a field of safety, sacred sovereignty, love, and sensual empowerment that will elicit a remembrance in you of who you are and what you're capable of. It will transmute the energy of doubt, lack, shame, and resentment, and resurrect in you the capacity to have a thriving relationship with your pleasure, purpose, power, and partner. With this truth anchored and embodied, you will see your sovereign vision begin to manifest and experience the fullness of your magic. This is by far my most powerful offering. To learn more and schedule a free 1-hour clarity call, go to KrystalArthur.com or click the link in the show notes. This is a virtual offering. I'm on a mission to see as many individuals and couples come alive to their power, purpose, prosperity, and pleasure as possible. Again, that's my name, KrystalArthur.com, or find the link in the show notes of this episode.
So we have a whole massive group of people who got that from their parents, who got that from their pastors, who got that from their government and every other parentified entity in our world, saying, you don't know anything about your body. Just do what the doctor says, even though doctors used to tell you to smoke, even though doctors used to, doctors have been wrong so many times. No, just trust your doctor. Don't Google. My girlfriend, who literally has a tumor, just said that her doctor told her, you shouldn't be Googling. And she's like, but you're not giving me answers. Right. And this is my life. So why would I not research about my own body? Right. But we're told you are powerless. Give all your power to me, to the government, to the doctor, to the teacher.
And that's not bashing teachers,
no.
And also not bashing doctors because once again, or pastors, they're just doing what they were taught to do. Just like I am parenting from the space that I only know how right now. They are working from the space that they only know how. So that is the level of grace that you have to have. But then you also have to be in the mindset of I can empathize with you, but this is what's best for us.
But it takes being willing to get very uncomfortable. And like you said earlier, we are taught to avoid pain.
Yeah.
But it's painful. It literally feels like your brain is breaking.
Yeah.
And every framework you have of life is falling apart.
Yep. Yes.
And sometimes it takes someone to abruptly break the pattern of what you believe.
Yeah.
And
so to circle back to your original question of me stepping out into hypnotherapy, we took a big roundabout there. So that I went into a mode of stepping into that rebel Whitney, who was like, I don't care anymore. I don't care what people think of me. And I've went back and forth. I've had the imposter syndrome real bad. The no, you're wrong. Not you're wrong about what you believe in right now. I haven't wavered from that since I've stepped into that. That's been a constant. You're wrong to think that you are capable of doing this big thing in your area that you live in small town USA, where people aren't going to accept this. Or with the soul coaching, oh, we're supposed to keep going. Sorry.
Do you need something? Oh, my bad. Yeah. Wait, I don't actually. Oh, that one. Oh, okay. See ya. You'll have to edit that out. Hey, check. Is it still red? What do you do with that, man?
I was like, oh man.
Come on. I'm so diligent about checking.
Yeah. Where was I at?
Small town USA.
Oh yeah.
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah, just and then with the soul coaching. So my life is insane right now. So who would trust their mental health with me? Why? But for some reason, I have people who consistently still come to see me on a weekly basis. And I go through those days where I'm like, why do I think I'm qualified to speak to this person when my life is a mess right now? And then I'll finish a session. I'll force myself to go into a session and I'll finish the session and I'll be like, not only was I getting downloads of how to help this person, but I learned a lot through this session. about myself, about my kids. Like, so that's why it feels like I'm doing life with them. Like I don't sit there and act like I'm above you. Like I have this big fancy college degree that I can wave around and say, I am way smarter than you and that's why you're coming to me. It's like, no, I do my best to make myself very real to people. Like I may be only 31 years old, but I've been through a lot of life. I've experienced a lot of things and I've walked through them and I'm still here, even though there were times where I didn't want to be here and almost wasn't here. But I kept going and figured out a way to get through it. And I'm a better person now than when I was a year ago, 5 years ago. So I know something. I've done something. And if my little bits of wisdom that I've learned throughout my life can help somebody else walk through their fire, and I have to stop. Like I have to get out of that imposter syndrome mentality. It's an ugly place to be.
I'm still here.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm still here. And that's, what you said, exactly what you just said, goes back to what we were just discussing about how we're trained and programmed and conditioned to outsource our safety and our wisdom and our power to these parentified establishments or entities, sometimes literally our parents or the government, the medical industry, religions. Part of that is what you said about like, I'm not positioning myself like, oh, I have this degree and so I know better than you. But that plays into that. We think that we are not, we can't be experts in ourselves. An expert looks like this. They've gone to these schools or they have these accolades behind their name. When really no one can be an expert in us other than ourselves.
Yeah.
And so that's why I love the work that you do, because it's really putting the power back into our own hands and like decentralizing truth and wisdom. And so it's a work of empowerment, and you feeling like an imposter is so interesting because I have experienced that too. And it's like, but that's exactly like, that's the point.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be them. I'm not trying to be an authority over them. When I think, oh yeah, I've taken enough certifications or I've learned enough that now I can do this, then I'm making myself an authority in their life.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be an authority. I want to, like you said, do life with them. I want to be alongside to hold space and to help them be able to identify their truth, to help them unlock what's going on in really eliciting the truth from within them. I'm not giving them truth. You can give someone tools, right? But those tools are only to help them find the truth within themselves.
Absolutely. Yes.
And so you're really just, and it does take a level of skill, right? To help it be more efficient, right? But really it's holding space for someone's own journey to unravel. Because most people don't even take the time or carve out the space or realize the power that is within them.
Yeah.
So helping them to access what is already there is the work.
Something I've told like majority of my clients is that like my goal is for you to not come to me anymore. And that's, people would be like, well, that's crazy because that's your livelihood. And it's like, if they're still needing me in a year or two, I'm not doing my job. I want to set them up to be able to be self-reliant, to be able to know like, okay, I can do this. And I think not to compare myself to God, like that's just like the craziest thing, but I think that's what God did. Like God sent us here, stripped our memories of spirit realm. Because if we were sent here with like our higher self, subconscious, like with all of the knowledge of all of the past lives that we've ever lived, the knowing that God is real and not having to find him every time we're here, you know, like, and how beautiful that is when we do find him, truly find him. There is something to be said about walking through crap and then hitting rock bottom and then figuring out tools to get up and then thriving after that. And so, like, sometimes we need help in that rock bottom to thriving because we're supposed to be in community with each other. We're not supposed to have to be self-reliant all the time, but to get to a point where you can be in this thriving space and be like, well, I'm no longer codependent. Like, I don't have to have this person pick me up off the ground anymore because now I'm resilient. And now I have the tools, I have the wisdom, I have the strength to keep moving forward, even if I fall down again. I had a session one time where I was meditating and praying before a session, and I didn't know that was going to be one of the craziest, wildest sessions that I've ever done. But like, I felt this need to like get my session really early and like spend a lot of time in prayer and meditation. And it was almost instant that I was given this really beautiful picture of being by a lake, and like there's like all these boulders and rocks that I'm like walking on, and but there's like green grass like right over here. So anxiety and fear is what it was showing me. It was like, okay, I can keep walking on these rocks forever and keep falling down and being or scared to take a step or whatever, or I could just stay still and not move. Or I could take this path over here where I may fall, I may misstep, but I'm going to get to solid ground. So I choose to take that route and get to that solid ground. But then once I get there, it's like, now what do I do? Like, is this going to be solid? So some people will go back to the rocks because that's their normal, the chaos. Or you stay on that solid path and you learn how to walk on that. And it's just like, when I got that, like, it was like I wrote it all down. So like there was so much more to it. But a lot of times we run back to chaos. We run back to the familiar whenever peace is right there. So once again, when we get to that space of growth and you no longer need me anymore, you're going to have days where you fall down again. And it's like, okay, call me. Like, you have that. Call me, but you don't need me all the time anymore. And that's just where, like, that, those are my goals. It's like, I want to see as many people in my life as I possibly can to get them to a space to where they are confident in themselves to do life and not question everything they're doing and not think that they're failing. Because I think we all struggle with fear of failure, or fear of letting people down, or just disappointing people. I think everybody does. And how are you supposed to like go through life like that? How are you supposed to live out of your full potential when you never believe in yourself all the way? Like, I feel like that's every one of my friends. Like everybody I've ever talked to in my life is like, they question everything they do. They don't believe in themselves. And it's like, that's another thing of indoctrination of like, we're told not to trust our emotions.
Yeah.
We're told
the heart is deceitful.
Yeah, the heart is deceitful. That we just
lean not on your own temptation.
lean
not on your own understanding.
Yeah. That we are born inherently bad. When we are told that we are born inherently bad, why on earth would I believe a word that comes out of my mouth or that enters my brain because I'm bad? I am sinful. And I would never look at my kid and be like, you're a sinner. You don't know. Like, yes, my children do things that are probably sinful, you know, like they're not perfect little kids. But like, if like for somebody to look at my kid and say, you're a bad kid, like I would lose my mind.
Right. So we have so much connotations built around the word sin because of our culture, right? But if we just say, oh yeah, you missed the mark, completely different energy behind that.
Absolutely.
Like completely different.
That's a guiding, like,
yeah.
Hey, struggled on that one. Let's try this.
But when we hear sin, we hear evil, damnation, hellbound. Like it's like, but that's all culture, and that's all like learning that like, oh, this wasn't always the understanding of these passages. This wasn't always how these words were interpreted. There is very strong implications of an agenda behind the interpretations that are at play. Like I said before, for me, it always came back to what does the Bible actually say? Because that's how I was raised, that's how I was trained. And so it's like, oh, the Bible doesn't actually say that, doesn't necessarily say that. So how is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Also, this makes a lot more sense. Also, this seems like a lot more loving and less abusive God. And as a parent, like you said earlier, you know, not that I'm going to compare myself to God. And like, there's always like two sides of things, right? It's like, on one way, it's like, yeah, absolutely not. Like to pretend like I am the whole of it. You know what I mean? Like, no, like I'm a ray of the sunshine. You know what I mean? But I love like the illustration of water, where it's like, am I the ocean or am I a drop of water of the ocean? It's like either way, it's made of the same stuff.
Yeah.
It's made of the same stuff.
I love that. Yeah.
And what is that? I'm not going to know who to quote, but like I'm not the edit this out, so I'm gonna butcher this. The ocean. Okay, I'm not gonna get it. I love it so much. I don't know why it's not coming to me right now. I don't know, but basically it's made of the exact same stuff.
Yeah.
And it's not that we are a piece of God that was broken off and lost. It's like, no, we are one, and that oneness can never be changed. No height, nor depth, nor life, no death. Nothing can separate us from the love of God. And it's not just like the feeling that God has for us. It's like God is the love of God. Right. God is that love.
Yeah.
And so like taking it back to like our children and like, yes, they make mistakes. We make mistakes. But then when you go rewind to like, why are we here? We're here to make mistakes. Yeah. We're here to, so why would we be punished for that? Like We're here to make mistakes, learn, and allow for everything, every mistake, every grief, every sorrow, every celebration to remind us of our true nature and to remind us of that love and to remind us of God. And so I thank you for sharing like how you came to pursue these not just as passions, but like professionally. I feel like what you shared is going to be really helpful for a lot of people who have something that's like, there's no way. Like you said, like either I'm in small town USA or none of my friends and family are going to get this, or I'm going to be shunned, or people are gonna call me a witch and be afraid of me. Like it's like I remember when you made a post about like what was it? Like crystals and stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I was like, "Ooh, she's brave." I think it was before I wasn't making posts.
But
like
you've kind of stepped into that space now where you're like,
I'm just like, you know what? It's been years now. It's been years, and so at this point, it's just kind of like, where are my people?
Mm-hmm.
Like you know what I mean? Like where are my people? Like, and I had to explain that to somebody recently. Like, it's not to push people away.
Yeah.
To me, it's like if I'm talking about who I am and what I love and what I believe, and that leads you to walk away, that's your prerogative, and I can't make you stay. But I'm not pushing anyone away. If my beliefs are so threatening to you that you need to step back, that's totally fine. I respect that.
And that, like, can make me look at me again. Okay, is there something that I'm speaking on right now that I'm standing for that is pushing other people away? If so, I need to look back at myself.
Right. And I am pushing people away if I'm judging them. Right.
So it's like, once again, it's always this circle of, okay, check in with myself. And then is it within my control? Is it without of my control? Is it a them problem or a me problem? But always just being honest. It's all about just being honest.
Before, I felt like I had to change people's beliefs.
Yes.
And when I was a Christian,
I felt that more when I was walking in the Christian line, going to church. Like, I was so concerned. Like, my husband was very I don't even know if I believe in God, and that destroyed me. I was I gotta get him.
Because you love him. You don't want him to burn forever. You don't want to,
Yeah. If that was my mindset, or he's gonna lead my children astray.
Oh yeah.
You know? So, and he's supposed to be the leader of our family, leading us spiritually, I got upset. Like, when I experienced my own church hurt, I had to go back and really think I was spiritually hurting my husband. Who needed me to just love him through that time and show him so much kindness and grace and just let him figure things out on his own. But I didn't learn that until I started walking in this, and I started trying to get people to listen to all my new theories and everything. And then finally I got to a point where I was like, it's not my job to convince them that this stuff is real. And then that's what brought me back to it wasn't my job to convince and force that either.
It's like a pendulum, or I don't know, but it's definitely a ride, right? Because whenever I think that's something that happens with, it's a phase that I kind of think you have to pass through.
Yeah.
Because initially when you first start deconstructing, you start learning things, and it's just
you want to tell everybody.
You have to tell everyone, because you told everyone the opposite. Especially we were in ministry, so we're preaching that you have to know this, you have to do this, you have to live this way, you have to believe this. And so it's I feel like I need to go back and I need to tell everyone this information. Everyone has to know. And then it's no, even that is indoctrination.
Yeah.
And
I'm such a verbal processor too.
Me too.
So, yeah. So if I'm
anything
learning
that I
something,
love or I'm excited about, I share.
I'm going to go balls to the wall on trying to talk to man, I bet when I got into this, I bet I annoyed everybody around me, but I couldn't quit because I was just so fascinated by it all. I learned things now. Right now I'm reading a book called Emotion Code, which is...
I have a friend who practices, a doctor. Our doctor practices Emotion Code.
That is my next certification.
I read it years ago, and I was like, this is definitely awesome, and I'm not ready for it. But at that time I was practicing something kind of similar, but it was Christian based. And I got certified in that.
Does it have a really weird name?
Yes.
It's
Splankna.
Yep.
And I got certified in level 1 of that.
Okay.
And I loved it. And I was practicing it. And that was some of the most powerful sessions I've had with people. And the more you, and so at first I was receiving spontaneous therapy from my counselor.
Okay.
And it was phenomenal for me. And that's why I wanted to practice it. And the more I learned about it, the more I realized that I was, at the same time, that was like the very beginning of my deconstruction. And so like, I don't want to like bash or anything, because that's not my intent. I think it works. Like it is very therapeutic, deeply therapeutic. And it was in alignment with the way that my belief was going. Because the higher you got into it, the more it gets into spiritual warfare. And I'm more non-dualistic than that. I'm more about, okay, if you're having dark thoughts, or if there's a part of you that is, protecting you or acting out or doing these sinful behaviors, I think these things need to be integrated. I think that those parts need to be loved and listened to. And there's a lesson for you there, more than you need to cast that out, or you need to fight that, you need to resist that. I think I'm more in alignment with what you resist persists.
Okay.
And like that we need to love all. Have you heard of like internal family systems?
No.
It's like, and I'm not studied up on it or certified or anything like that, but it's more like there's different parts of ourselves. Maybe one part presents rebellious. Maybe one part presents imbalanced sexually, right? Maybe one part presents angry all the time. And it's not that these are evil spirits that have taken over you, but rather that there's probably a story there. There's probably some trauma there. There's probably something there that is protecting you. You get angry. Or
past life related.
There's so many other options than that there is a spiritual army against you that's trying to take over your body. So I think for me, that's why I didn't follow through with finishing my certification. And I was just like, that's not what my belief system is anymore. And I more want to help people integrate those parts of themselves. I don't think it's anything outside of us. I don't think there is anything outside of us. I think it's all one. For me, that's I said earlier, I believe there's only one power in the universe, and that is God. I don't think there's a second power or force that could even possibly try to combat or war against God. I don't think that's possible. I think it's just God.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, what is God saying or doing in me with these parts of myself?
Right. So that is actually more emotion code then, because it's like trapped emotions that could have happened. Like one of the stories I just read about in the book was like something that happened to her in childbirth.
Yeah.
That was like stayed within the body.
Yeah. So we would go back, that was more intentionally timeline regression. Like what age is coming up.
Yeah.
And then we go to that specific age. It was really brilliant a practice. I just didn't like that aspect of it. And I didn't know how to use the practice without applying the belief system, if that makes sense. It was very integrated. And that's why I love emotion code, because go on.
No, what
no, just like that's why I love emotion code, because it lets go of that part of it. There is so much. We would literally go back to a specific age. Sometimes it was in utero. Sometimes it was when they were way too young to remember.
Right.
But then they would have this huge healing, emotional release and transformation. And then like sometimes go back and be like, hey mom, was there anything going on at that age? I was like, oh yeah, me and your dad, we're da-da-da. It's just like, whoa, like this is my, so it was like, it was very real.
Yeah.
And like almost like undeniable.
Yeah. So it reminds me of Reiki in a sense, because it's energy based, it's releasing, it's healing. But with the issue I'm coming up with Reiki is people leaving sessions and they can tell that something's different.
Okay.
They're like, I do feel different. And then I'll sit there and talk to them and I'll explain things that like kind of came up for me and what chakras were out of balance or out of line. And then like I will, like, I'm very big about sending my clients my notes. Like it was very weird to me, like having a counselor sit there and write notes about me, and I never knew what they wrote. Like that was
interesting too.
Yeah.
1 second.
Yep.
Start. What time is it?
1:30.
Oh, is it? Oh, I have a call.
Oh, okay.
Shoot. Okay, let's conclude.
Okay.
But go ahead, finish. Shoot.
No, you got to do your call.
Oh man, that went by so fast.
It did.
Okay, let me just. Oh man. Oh, girl. Okay, we have to do some sort of conclusion though.
Okay.
So let me at least get this in here so I can quickly click into the Zoom call. No, that was so fast. Oh, girl, we could talk for hours and hours and hours and hours.
I know.
And hours. Okay, 1:30. Okay, I'll log on in just 1 second. Okay. I don't even know how to conclude, but
I don't
go
know.
ahead.
I don't even know what I was saying.
Emotion code. With Reiki, the issue was coming up that
people were being like, okay, so they knew that something was different. They knew they felt different, but then what?
Yeah.
So with emotion code, it's like, we're going to be able to pinpoint a very specific thing for you, and I can integrate emotion code with Reiki. And that's my biggest thing is like, I feel like all of the things that I do, they're separate things, but they can all work together in some way, shape, or form. I can do a hypnotherapy session and follow it with some soul coaching sessions. I can do a Reiki session and follow it with soul coaching, or do a hypnotherapy session and do Reiki while I'm doing your hypnotherapy session. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing like who you are, how you practice, how you found the courage.
I'm a little winded. I'm sorry. I talk so much. I could just talk all day.
How you found the courage to pursue your desire in the face of a lot of like controversy and like judgment and fear from the community, but you didn't let that hold you back from really serving, ministering, offering a space that I'm sure most of your clients would not have found elsewhere. That's powerful work. And you sharing it with us, I really appreciate, because it's going to encourage somebody. I just know it's going to encourage someone to take that step.
And I really hope,
and
that'd be amazing.
Either get into session with somebody and be able to open up and trust and learn something new about themselves, or to become a practitioner themselves and to help that many more people. So thank you. I know this is like our second conversation, but it won't be the last because we can just keep going.
I know.
I'm already thinking of different things we didn't get to go into, but just thank you, girl.
Thank you.
I'm not even gonna do an outro. Okay, I gotta get on. Okay, girl, I'm so sorry.
No, you're good.
But that was fantastic.
Gosh, I feel like.
Thank you for listening to the Divine Desire podcast. I'm Krystal Arthur. This is where together we dive into the wellness, woo, and taboo in business and in ourselves to reclaim our power and heal our relationships with our pleasure, purpose, prosperity, and partners. You're invited to check out the next episode. Please leave a rating and review on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. Also, if you found anything helpful, inspiring, or curious, please share this podcast with a friend. If you want to invite me to be on your podcast, apply to be our next guest, or receive more teachings and tools from me, head over to krystalarthur.com and join our free community and email list. Thank you so much for being here.